In the charged silence between us, I leveled my gaze at him and said, I found peace through forgiveness, but your past haunts every word, and one more betrayal, and our restored trust in business empire will shatter beyond repair. His reply, low and laden with regret, cut the air like a knife. You've always had the power to disarm me, and now your final words leave nothing but ruin in their wake. Chapter 1. The Call to Counsel. The lingering chill of unresolved pasts filled the spacious, warmly lit room as Elena made her way to the seating circle, each step a reminder of the family bonds strained over decades. Today was not meant to be an ordinary family gathering. It was the long-awaited council, a fragile attempt at mending fractures and restoring the trust that had been so slowly eroded by secrets and betrayals. As she arrived, an uneasy anticipation fluttered in her chest, a mingling of hope and deep-rooted caution, born out of years of disappointment. Elena's eyes roamed the room, meeting wary stares and tentative smiles from relatives who, like her, carried the heavy baggage of former grievances. The council had been set not only as a space for dialogue, but also as a symbolic restoration of the family trust, a beacon of potential unity. However, beneath the surface, old wounds throbbed and unspoken suspicions simmered. Every laugh, every tentative exchange of pleasantries, seemed to carry the weight of a past that refused to be forgotten. Standing in the center of that carefully arranged circle, an assortment of family members, each face etched with stories of betrayal and forgiveness, signaled the intensity of what lay ahead. Elena found herself mentally rehearsing the very idea of forgiveness. How could one find solace in words after years of silent distrust? And yet, as she prepared to speak, the distinct possibility of healing began to kindle in a small corner of her heart, despite the nagging voice of skepticism. Then, as if summoned by fate itself, the conversation was interrupted by the door opening, and in walked a man whose presence immediately shifted the air. It was Adrian, the very antagonist whose past misdeeds had once scarred her family's sense of security. In the years that had followed, he had transformed from a shadow of betrayal into a man marked by sincere remorse. His entry was quiet, deliberate, a stark contrast to the simmering tension in the council room. Elena's heart pounded unexpectedly as her eyes met his across the room, a look fleeting yet potent, charged with something unspoken. Adrian's gaze was softened by regret, but there was also an unmistakable spark, a glimmer of courage that reached out to the broken parts of her soul. The room seemed to pause in hushed expectancy. Family members murmured softly among themselves. Some were visibly taken aback by his return, while others, with caution as their guide, acknowledged that the past might not be so stubborn after all. As silence reclaimed its hold, Elena observed the dynamics unfold. The council members sorted themselves, voices subdued but determined, their expressions revealing a mix of hope and lingering bitterness. The charge of reconciling old wounds was palpable. Elena felt the strains of her inner conflict tighten anew. Her heart warred with the rigid convictions established long ago. Trust, so essential yet so elusive, hovered in midair like an ideal too delicate to grasp. When the meeting commenced, every voice was weighted with years of personal history. Elena listened deeply as elders recounted formative memories, some painting a picture of unity, others chronicling heartbreak. Each word was a brushstroke on a canvas long marred by distrust and regret. She found herself drawn to the notion that every broken piece might, if carefully tended, be mended. And there, in the gentle cadence of shared experiences, she glimpsed the possibility of a future where pain could be forgiven. In one stirring moment, as a particularly emotional relative bravely disclosed long-held secrets, Elena's fortitude began to crumble under the weight of raw vulnerability. Her own recollections surged to the surface, unbidden yet liberating, and for a brief moment, her hardened resolve melted away. It was in these intersecting instances of shared grief and tentative optimism that the seeds of reconciliation began to take root in her heart, a silent, almost imperceptible shift towards a rediscovered trust in family and in herself. And then, as if echoing her internal struggle, she caught sight of Adrian across the room. His expression was one of earnestness, every line on his face narrating a story of regret and renewal. Their eyes locked for an instant, charged glances passing between them, a silent communication of mutual understanding and tentative invitation. It was as though the years of enmity and sorrow had been distilled into that singular electric moment of connection. In his eyes, Elena saw the possibility of redemption, not just for him, but for the family itself. Despite the clouds of suspicion that once loomed so large, there now stirred a delicate promise of alliance, a recognition that perhaps forgiveness was not an impossible feat. Amid the intricate tapestry of dialogue and recollection, the subtle interplay between Elena and Adrian did not go unnoticed. Whispers fluttered like soft wings, as half-formed opinions began to take shape in the minds of those who had not yet resigned themselves to the past. Nervous smiles and cautious nods were exchanged. The council, while burdened by history, was ready to entertain the vision of transformation. In that charged atmosphere, the burden of mistrust was slowly giving way to the possibility of reconciliation. Throughout the session, as each family member placed their fragile hopes and unhealed scars upon the shared table of remembrance and intent, Elena's own internal battle became more visible. The rigid barriers built from past betrayals were being chipped away by the slow yet relentless march of conversations that dared to speak of forgiveness, of change, and perhaps even of love. Sometimes, beneath the formal cadence of discussions about the future of the family trust, she would catch a glimpse of Adrian, his posture relaxed, his eyes reflective, and for a heartbeat, the irony of their connection was not lost on her. It was an alliance forged amidst adversity, one that held within it the raw promise of renewal. As the meeting edged towards its conclusion, an almost imperceptible transformation took root. The family council, though still peppered with moments of tension and guarded optimism, had succeeded in sparking conversations that were long overdue. Elena, reflecting on the day's events, recognized that trust was not a commodity to be demanded, but a fragile construct to be cultivated slowly, nurtured by shared truths and mutual forgiveness. She left the gathering with a renewed determination to see this process through, bolstered by the improbable partnership hinted at in the charged looks exchanged with Adrian. In the quiet aftermath of the council, as the family members dispersed, and the echoes of their dialogue faded into the evening, Elena lingered. The fire of renewed purpose glowed in her eyes, a mixture of tentative hope and a cautious longing to bridge the chasms that had once defined her world. Each lingering gaze and every whispered word now carried a promise that perhaps the most profound transformations begin with a single courageous act of reaching out across the divide of mistrust. And amid it all, the unexpected allure of the reformed man who had once been her greatest adversary, now perhaps a companion in the arduous, yet beautiful journey towards redemption. Chapter 2. Bridging Old Wounds. The conference room of the ancestral estate buzzed with a low murmur of skepticism and hope. Today, the family council, long burdened by old betrayals and festering resentments, gathered to mend broken bridges. Maria, our steadfast protagonist, took center stage once again. Though her eyes revealed the weight of past wounds, the sparkle of determination shone through as she prepared to steer the council toward the restoration of the family trust and the renewal of the coveted business alliance with long-standing partners. Beside her, Adrian, her enigmatic love interest, was equally committed to this delicate task. The two had spent countless hours poring over legal documents, legacy charters, and financial ledgers, all while navigating the subtle chafing of family loyalties. As the discussions progressed, the couple's demeanor evolved from professional colleagues towards something richer, imbued with shared understanding and mutual vulnerability. When the council briefly adjourned for a private conversation, Maria and Adrian slipped away to a secluded corner of the estate, a quiet alcove with a view of the sprawling, meticulously manicured gardens. It was in this serene shelter that they agreed to take a more candid look at their intertwined pasts and perhaps a shared future. The cool afternoon air mirrored their composed exteriors, yet beneath those layers simmered personal stories too long left unspoken. I grew up believing that our family was built on stone and pride, Maria began, her voice audible only in the gentle intimacy of the secluded terrace. But that stone, over time, can crumble under the weight of miscommunications and lost opportunities. I always dreaded the day when I'd be forced to choose between loyalty to tradition and the truth of my own heart. Adrian listened intently, his own eyes softening with empathy. He reached out, almost instinctively, to brush a stray lock of hair from her face. I've wrestled with similar conflicts, he said quietly. Because my past was entangled with decisions that still haunt me, I've made compromises that I now regret. but sharing those burdens with you feels like a step toward healing. The conversation deepened as they exchanged stories of forgotten misgivings, personal sacrifices, and quiet disappointments. It was a meeting of minds and hearts, each moment eroding the once insurmountable barriers between their public personas and the true selves hidden behind them. Their shared vulnerabilities became the cornerstone of a delicate intimacy that none in the council had yet noticed. The air thickened with the intensity of their confessions when, during a pause in their dialogue, a faded photograph of their childhood, a silent witness to family unity long past, slipped from Maria's fingers onto the worn, tiled floor. Like a relic of old times, it served as a tender reminder that every scar and every regret was also part of a larger story worth saving. In that suspended moment, their eyes locked. There was no need for further words. The glance spoke of longing, shared pain, and an unacknowledged passion waiting to be reignited. Drawn by gravity beyond reason, their foreheads met in a soft, earnest collision. Then, as if reality itself softened, they succumbed to an urge that neither could deny, a secret kiss that sealed their new emotional pact. It was neither wild nor reckless, but a gentle affirmation of their mutual desire to bridge the chasms that divided them from their past and from one another. For a fleeting moment, the din of the council room and the whispers of discontent among family members faded into oblivion. However, as the rustling leaves outside bore witness to their tender union, subtle but persistent undercurrents of dissent were rippling through the council members. In the ornate lobby, just beyond the alcove, murmurs arose. Some relatives eyed their gesture with suspicion, unwilling to relish in anything that might undermine long-held protocols. A few elders exchanged furtive glances, silently weighing the merits of change against the sanctity of old traditions. Yet amid the silent protests there were also hopeful nods, those who longed for a future free of ancestral grudges and rigid dogma. Back in the privacy of their secluded retreat, the kiss left Maria and Adrian both trembling and resolute. It was a commitment to acknowledge old wounds while daring to imagine a future where scars could be not just hidden, but celebrated as marks of survival. Their smiles, mingled with regret and relief, served as a beacon against the encroaching darkness of familial discord. After their intimate interlude, they returned to the council meeting with a renewed sense of purpose. Maria took the floor to present an outline for the trust restoration, her voice resonating with quiet strength. She detailed plans for the reintegration of legacy assets, careful yet bold adjustments that would mesh the old ways with innovative thinking. Around her, murmurs of dissent and tentative support filled the space. Some voices hissed disapproval, clinging to outdated traditions, while others embraced the shift, glancing at Maria and Adrian with a subtle nod of approval. Adrian, too, played his part with mindful precision. His proposals for modernizing the business alliance were steeped in both financial acumen and heartfelt passion. He proposed new strategic partnerships to revitalize their enterprises, not as a rejection of heritage, but as an evolution of it. His words, assertive yet compassionate, struck a chord with many council members tired of perpetual strife and resistant stagnation. Throughout the session, the couple's private connection remained a silent rallying cry for progress. Beyond the rigid formulations of budgets and legalities, their shared moment symbolized the possibility of mending the deep fractures within the family. In the sidebar of closed-door discussions, a few heralded their union as a sign that trust could be rebuilt, step by step, kiss by kiss, a testament to the courage it took to bridge the old wounds that had long defined them. As the council meeting drew to a close, a tentative optimism hung in the air. There were numerous challenges still to tackle: unresolved grudges, latent suspicions, and even the threat of a complete breakdown in alliances. Yet, in that room, amidst heated debates and delicate reconciliations, Maria and Adrian's newfound connection provided a glimmer of hope. The prospect of renewal was no longer merely about restoring assets or modernizing business structures. It was about healing hearts and fostering bonds that could withstand the strains of time. In the quiet that followed, as evening settled in and the family dispersed into the night, the promise of change lingered. Each step taken during the meeting in the ancestral hall was a step toward a future where legacy and innovation might dance in harmony. And though the path ahead was fraught with challenges, the clandestine kiss shared in that hidden alcove had sown the seeds for a transformation that was as personal as it was familial, a quiet yet steadfast bridge over the troubled waters of history. Chapter 3. Moments of Truth. The boardroom, with its polished table and ambient lighting, felt more like a stage for drama than a place of decision. Faces once trusting were now skeptical, reflecting the weight of past secrets. Mia, usually calm, sat at the head of the table, her eyes revealing inner turmoil. "We're here to address our business's future and confront past mistakes," she announced, her voice slightly trembling. Her words forced everyone to confront their painful legacy. Julian, once an antagonist, sat quietly, memories threatening to resurface. Though publicly reformed, old suspicions lingered. Years ago, his decisions had endangered the family's legacy, leading to whispers of past scandals involving misappropriated funds. Evelyn, Mia's confidante, leaned forward, her eyes a mix of anger and sorrow. "How can we trust a future built on past secrets?" she asked, dividing the room between forgiveness and old wounds. Julian's defenses crumbled under questioning. "I know I can't undo my mistakes," he confessed. "I've changed, but I live with my past." His admission sparked a storm of emotions, with calls for mercy and demands for accountability. Mia and Evelyn's eyes met amid the chaos, acknowledging shared pain. This meeting, meant for business, turned into a reckoning of forgiveness and redemption. Mia rose, her calm masking inner turmoil. "Let's remember the bonds that forged us," she urged. A buried secret emerged, a night when Julian's financial missteps nearly cost a partnership, igniting anger and despair. Julian's face showed deep regret. "I was blind and selfish," he admitted, his honesty sparking fragile empathy. The meeting's intensity gave way to a quieter moment between Mia and Evelyn in the garden. Evelyn, fearful, voiced her doubts. "I'm scared the trust we fought for is slipping away," she said. Mia, with sorrow and hope, replied, "Every wound shows our strength. I still believe in our love." Their kiss was a promise of resilience amid family conflict. Back in the boardroom, discord continued, but change was underway. Julian's confession became a catalyst for understanding redemption, planting seeds of future healing. The meeting ended with an uneasy truce, balancing justice with hope. As evening fell, Mia and Evelyn walked the corridors, aware their world had changed. The confrontation shattered illusions, but offered a chance to rebuild trust. Their love proved resilient. Even as scars spoke of past betrayals. In those moments, each soul pondered the cost of secrets and the liberation of confession, a step toward a future where forgiveness might bridge past and future. Chapter 4. Renewal and Bittersweet Peace. The morning light filtered through tall windows, as the family council gathered in the newly restored boardroom, a room that had once stood witness to tumult and disarray. Today, however, its air was charged with a promise of fresh beginnings. The renewal of the business alliance was not merely a formality. It was, in every sense, a celebration of change, growth, and hard-earned unity. As members took their seats, the protagonist, Elena, felt a subtle transformation stirring inside her. The scars of betrayal and the sting of painful revelations remained etched in her memory, tender reminders of the journey she had traversed. Yet beneath that lingering ache was a new resolve, a deep sense of peace that belied the bittersweet echoes of the past. She had come to understand that wounds, no matter how raw, were the seeds from which strength and transformation blossom. At the head of the table, the patriarch addressed the council with measured authority, his voice imbued with a humility that had taken years to cultivate. "We stand at the crossroads of yesterday's sorrow and tomorrow's hope," he intoned, his words causing a ripple of murmured assent. Each member understood the gravity of this moment. This was not simply about the business. It was about reclaiming a sense of family and purpose, shattering the chains of mistrust that had so long shackled them. Elena's eyes met those of her love interest, Marco, who sat just a few seats away. Their journey had been fraught with misunderstandings and obstacles, yet underneath it all, the enduring truth of their connection thrived. Over the years, painful secrets and closed-off hearts had slowly given way to honesty and mutual healing. As the patriarch's speech wove threads of accountability, hope, and collective resilience, Elena felt a swell of emotion, not solely for their shared past, but for the promise of an uncharted future. With the formal proceedings underway, attention shifted to the symbolic act of signing the renewed alliance. Each signature on the document was a testament to negotiated strife and the willingness to find common ground amid the tempest of discord. When it came time to sign her name, Elena paused, her signature a quiet challenge to the pain that had once defined her. In that pause lay an unspoken commitment, love, forgiveness, and the determination to move forward together. Later, as the council adjourned and laughter began to replace solemnity, Elena and Marco slipped away from the bustle into the calm corridors of the refurbished estate. The corridors, once arenas of hushed conspiracies and veiled emotions, now held the serene promise of open hearts and unburdened souls. Standing beneath a window that overlooked the cultivated gardens below, the two found themselves alone, cradled by a fragile peace. Marco reached out to gently brush a stray hair from Elena's face. "Today felt like the beginning of something entirely new," he whispered, his voice soft yet resonant against the quiet backdrop. In his eyes, there was an acknowledgement of battles fought and the inevitability of lingering pain, but also an unfaltering belief in the beauty of what lay ahead. Elena's hand trembled slightly as she allowed herself to lean into his warmth. There was an understanding between them that the journey was far from over. Each step forward was a delicate dance with memories that sometimes cut too deeply. Yet the renewal of the family council had given them every reason to believe that past wounds did not consign them to endless despair, but instead provided lessons for growth. Under the filtered glow of the setting sun, Marco drew Elena closer. Their kiss, tender yet filled with an unspoken promise, sealed a fragile future bound by mutual trust and the courage to heal. In the ensuing days, the council's newly formed unity began to resonate more palpably among the family members. Small, deliberate acts of forgiveness, an apology here, a word of reassurance there, wove a tapestry of compassion that stretched across old divides. The discussions that once spiraled into bitterness had given way to spirited debates where each voice, though still echoing ancient grievances, now sought solutions rather than merely stoking the flames of discord. Even those who had once stood firmly against change found a way to channel their dissatisfaction into constructive critique, ensuring every decision was steeped in collective wisdom. As sunset turned the sky into a canvas of muted lavender and orange, Elena found herself reflecting on the delicate interplay between hope and melancholy. Walking slowly beside the restored fountain in the garden, an emblem of continuity in the midst of change, she allowed the cool evening air to remind her that even as certain chapters close, the residue of old pain was a part of who she was. It would always be there, a quiet shadow on her heart, but it no longer defined her. Instead, it had prompted resilience and an acknowledgement that growth is often accompanied by the scar tissue of past battles. That consciousness came with its own form of dissolution and renewal. Elena knew that while the family council had triumphed in forging a shared path forward, moments of doubt and sorrow were inevitable. However, these remnants of former strife were not antagonists, but rather silent witnesses to their journey, a bittersweet peace that bore the marks of every trial and every triumph. She understood that as long as they continued to honor the truths of the past, while embracing the uncertain beauty of the future, hope would remain an unwavering lighthouse amid life's turbulence. And so, as the final moments of the day faded and dusk settled deep around the garden, Elena and Marco shared one last moment of intimacy. There was no explosive declaration or dramatic flair, only a powerful, quiet affirmation of their fate and a promise of steadfast support. Their eyes spoke of history and healing, of promises made and kept, and in that intimate silence, the inevitability of tomorrow was both acknowledged and celebrated. As the narrative of that chapter closed, the renewed family council and the business alliance stood as enduring symbols of forgiveness and unity. Every resolved dispute and every tender moment of vulnerability had contributed to a peace that, though tinged with the sorrow of bygone days, illuminated the path to a hopeful future. It was in that everyday reconciling of differences that they discovered the true strength of their bond, a strength that neither time nor residual pain could ever truly erode. In the twilight of the day, as Elena and Marco walked hand in hand back towards the inner sanctum of the estate, the promise of a renewed and united future hovered in the cool breeze. Their hearts, though still marked by the past, dared to dream of a future where even the deepest scars could serve as reminders not of loss, but of the unyielding power of renewal, compassion, and love.